Zamfir and the pan flute. All right, Awesemo, here we go. First of two shows, back-to-back doubleheaders, NBA for an hour, followed by a brief changeover to the NFL stream, and then we're going to take that one up to lock. Double live before locks. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with Terry McBride, T McBee out there, Digital B21 on the Twitter sphere. What's going on, Terry? This is your second show of the day. So you're going to do three shows, and you did two articles?
Yep. Triple header for me today on the shows. Had two articles up already today. I think I put three articles up yesterday. I was on a show, so wall-to-wall me. Lucky everybody out there this weekend. Hopefully we get a lot of big winners, otherwise I might get fired.
I'm trying to remember. I think when I was at Roto Grinders, I did four shows in one day because there was a snafu or something. It was like nonstop. I think it was college football, NBA, and I don't know, something else. It was crazy. So that was like the all-time record that anybody had.
Technically, I am on the Saturday editing shift right now as well. So apologies out there if anything's misspelled on the site. Didn't get a lot of time for it, but that's dedicated to these shows that we were about to watch. So hopefully it'll work out well.
All right, well, let's get the chat popped out here. We've got people cruising on in. Got about 500 of you, 73 likes. Let's get that up to 100. Because if we get up to a nice big number, I'll probably put some head-to-heads out here. We do have 5 spots left in the Fred Van Elite fan club. You guys should know that well by now. That is my little creation where I have to play Fred Van Vliet. You don't. And there's the link to the pinned tweet. But if you win that contest with an Awesemo avatar, we'll get you 30 free days of full access premium. Pretty good deal there. We had a 3-way tie in the last game. So I've awarded 2 of the prizes already. So Wheels, I'm hoping that was you. I thought that's your username. If you're watching, I sent you a DM on Twitter. Check that out. I know his account. He said he had to make a new account. It got hacked. So I think I sent it to the Anyway, there we go. All right, and here we go. It's actually News God's birthday, not mine. So here's a little sign for News God. Happy birthday! Look at that, X's and O's, just for you.
Oh, look at that.
From me to you, Ron. Right there, baby. Right there. All right, let's have some fun here. Let's go through some of our things. Hit that like button. We already mentioned that. Subscribe. We're on our way to 50K here. We definitely like this. We will be giving big things away when we hit 50,000 subscribers here. So we've got a lot of news for a 4-game slate here. So I don't believe we have news yet for Gordon Hayward is probable. Okay, so that one changed. So I thought they were going to hold out Gordon Hayward. He went from probable to doubtful to out in the last game. Charlotte doesn't play again until Wednesday. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to give him another, 4 days off, basically. They have one of their little mini breaks here. But he is going to be in. For Toronto, Pat McCaw is out with the knee. Alex Len still out for personal reasons. Miami, it's a little tricky here. So we'll talk about who's out. Tyler Hero is out. He has back spasms. That hit him mid-game of the last game, and he was unable to play. Jimmy Butler out with an ankle / health and safety protocol. Avery Bradley still under the health and safety protocol. Myers Leonard is out from a shoulder. Now, here are all the people coming back. So you've got, and these are all from the health and safety protocol, so the COVID list. So Bam Adebayo, Mo Harkless, KZ Okpala, Kendrick Nunn, and Goran Dragic they are all available to make their returns tonight. So I wanted to point all of those out. For Detroit, Frank Jackson out with an ankle. Derrick Rose back from knee soreness, which is just going to plague him for the rest of his career. Do we have a Ja Morant update yet? So he's still questionable. We'll have to see what happens there. So if he comes back, and maybe not his full minutes because he's missed almost 2 weeks, I think now. But that'll kind of, it'll help Memphis, but it'll muck up some of their salaries because they've all accounted for the fact that he has been out of the rotation for quite some time. From Philadelphia, you've got Joel Embiid, not even on the road trip, a 2-game road trip here with Philly. He's not with them. He's dealing with a knee issue. You have Mike Scott also dealing with the knee issue. You've got Seth Curry, who is in the health and safety protocol. He did test positive for COVID-19. And then you have Furkan Korkmaz, who's going to be out for a couple more games with I think it's a groin strain or a adductor strain on that one. For the Atlanta side, you've got Danilo Gallinari, Bogdanovic, and are both out. Reddish still questionable with the knee. For Portland, Yusuf Nurkic broke his wrist, fractured his wrist, had right wrist, and he had surgery on it. He's going to be out for at least 2 months. So we'll break that down when we get into it. But that's a lot considering we have just 8 teams in our player pool. Oh, and the first person that puts Devin Booker out in chat tonight, I'm going to ban you for life. Phoenix and Indiana are not playing because of COVID concerns for that. And then Eric Jackson, Team Eric, love that. He just gave us a $10 super chat, says thank you for doing the great work. We appreciate that. We're doing this labor of love. We do this for you guys too.
That's right.
On that end. All right, so let's do one last little call to action. We're sponsored tonight by Awesemo. So I wanted to let you know about Odds Shopper. So you don't want to make a bet without shopping for the odds first. Betting lines can change by the minute and vary greatly depending on which book you're using. That's why it's important to use Awesemo Odds Shopper to find the best line available for the game or the player prop that you are wagering on to give you that edge that you need to beat the house, because we know the house is very, very smart. So we're trying to find any little edge that we can. So head on over there to oddsshopper.awesemo.com. And you can also just see it at the top of awesemo.com and click on that, and you can get game breakdowns. The NFL pages are amazing. It shows you who's betting on what, the public money, the sharp money. It's incredible what they've put together there. So definitely check that out. It's free. You can also make an account there if you want, and you can track your bets if you want to see how you're doing, just for fun, for those of you that maybe are on a little more of an entertainment budget. Or if you would, end up just wanting to have a little bit of fun. This is a super chat. So Fear the Loan. We'll talk about the under 4K options on DK. Are there, as we get in there, let me pull up some of my stuff. Filtered for the early slate. Playing too many sports today, Terry. We're looking for some 4K options, and then we'll kick off our game. Let me quickly filter. Since this
was updating my Vegas lines from Odd Shopper right now as you were talking about it. I was looking at all these different lines in one spot. It is pretty.
So here's some. So there's some okay ones, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you your center spot. So we've got Tony Bradley with Joel Embiid out. We're going to have Tony Bradley and Dwight Howard essentially sharing the 48 or so minutes there, depending. We could always see Philly go small, but Bradley is 3,000 even, and we have him at 18.3 DK points. So that's pretty solid. In the nightcap, you've got Gary Trent Jr. And we'll talk about the rotation tweaking a little bit there. But with the way Atlanta's built, I don't know how small they're going to go as long as they have Clint Capella on the court. But Gary Trent Jr. has closed out some of the games recently, so we like that. Harry Giles, I feel, is going to get somewhere between 17 and 18 minutes. I haven't looked to see what we have him projected at, but in the absence of Yusuf Nurkic, we'll see that. The interesting thing about Giles is we'll want to cost you the center spot as well. But also, I think I had looked at this from memory, but going all the way back to college, he's had knee surgeries on multiple knee surgeries on both knees. So I think he's played more than 30 minutes, like twice in his career. I think he played like more than 26 minutes and then he had a good preseason game, and he had one other one now they're saying I lied about News God's birthday. Well, he said it was my birthday.
I thought that was the bit.
So it's really his birthday.
Isn't that the bit they've been doing in chat all along? Always just making up that it's somebody's birthday. How's it lie?
Yes, absolutely. But I had to sign. Hell, I've even got a party hat here. Because, now we do all these Zoom calls all the time. So people at work or family, I got it. I'm ready for birthdays. So, but there we go. All right. So those are the guys that I want to throw out there. Derek Jones Jr. maybe. So none of these are overly exciting. I was hoping we could maybe get a Cody Martin, or pardon me, Caleb Martin. I get them confused. Did you know they're twins? They're brothers?
I did know that.
Yeah. Jordan's laughing in the background. He's very happy now. All right. Well, let's get us kicked off back with the first game. So we have the Fred Van Elite Fan Club game here. We've got Charlotte. I've been talking nonstop. Take it away. This is you. We'll do the heavy lifting. I was just easing you into it since this is your second show. We're pacing ourselves since we have a third show coming up, or you do anyway. I have a second. But go on here and break us down. The Charlotte Hornets, who are playing Toronto. This game is, of course, not in Toronto. Somewhere in Tampa Bay or wherever.
The Tampa Bay Toronto Raptors, yeah.
Yeah, at this point in time. But take her away, Terry.
So you mentioned, the major piece of news that we were waiting on for most of the day, and we've got a probable on Gordon Hayward at this point. So I'm willing to assume that he's going to be in. We did see the other day, like you said, he went from doubtful to he's going to be in to he's out, and we saw Caleb Martin get the start. I don't think they're going to do that again here, so I would expect to see him on the court, which, of course, is going to knock Martin back to the bench. It's going to take maybe a little bit off the top of a Miles Bridges, but he should still maintain around that like 25, 26 minutes that we saw him be effective in the other day. But ultimately, I think Hayward would probably be the story out of that group of guys. Definitely going to see his usual run, maybe 32 minutes instead of 35. But at 7,800 on both sites, I think he's in play. 15% optimal lineup rate on FanDuel, drops to 11 on DK. Like him a little less over there. He's getting attention on both sites, but I think where he's in the optimal more on FanDuel, we can get to him at a kind of a weak small forward spot as well. So he's in play. The guards, Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, I never love getting to them, but they pop up. Graham in particular on FanDuel, 5,800, pretty good price for him. 19.7% of the optimals right now. He's getting owned, but I think it's a spot where maybe we can leverage up. He doesn't have a giant boom score, which is a little bit concerning. So we'll take a look as how he compares to the rest of the position as we go. Just looking at the other side of this game, like if you wanted to go to Fred Van Vliet at 7,900, you're paying a significant difference for him, and you're moving up by like 10 percentage points in terms of your boom score and about 10 raw projection points. So something like that might be worth considering. But again, he's another guy who's going to be fairly owned. So there's some flex in the Charlotte offense today. I think it's a game that could be a little sneaky in terms of, maybe it's not the highlight game that people are looking for, and maybe it goes a little bit under the radar. And there are some names in here that are workable players with upside. It's just tricky to figure out exactly where it's going to come from. There's a few options on Charlotte. It's more concentrated on Toronto, but again, among that group of guys that we know can get there, I'm not entirely sure where it's going, especially when we start to consider the Chris Boucher minutes that I'm sure we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, and that's going to be, not to leap right into that, but the question is, when will Chris Boucher actually start? Now, that may or may not help his fantasy production. So talking about that for just a minute, just because you're a starter doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Right now, he's getting unfettered access to all the shots and he wants, and plenty of rebound opportunities coming off the bench. He's also started the second half of the last two games, which is something that is key. But with the way Toronto is kind of a little bit thin in the way they're built here, the interesting thing is, what are they going to do? Because if you have X number of good players and they all end up in the starting lineup, then you don't have a bench. Then you get, just kind of a messy team. So it's one of those you always want to look at. My favorite example of that was always Kelly Oubre with Washington. So when he would get into the starting lineup, his first, second year here in the DC area, he would just defer to everybody. Whereas when he'd be on the and playing in DGAF mode the whole time, which is what you wanted. But then as soon as he got in with all the starters, he's like, no, Mr. Beal, this is your shot. Thank you, Mr. Wall, but let me pass the ball back to you, right? Sort of thing. So a lot of this just depends on context and what it is. So we just want to talk about that because sometimes it's a good thing to go into the starting lineup. Sometimes it's a good thing, like Goran Dragic, who has said, hey, I'm cool coming off the bench. I'm fine with that because he's going to close still. Right. And those are the key minutes. We're more worried about who's closing than we really are per se who's starting. So just a little bit on that. How do you like? I'm always biased here, but Mr. Fred Van Elite, the contest did fill, by the way. But nice. Thank you guys for running or jumping into that one. I do like Van Vliet. We are seeing him play some pretty heavy minutes. We are seeing Lowry not quite as many heavy minutes. Lowry's 12th year, 14th year. I need to go look that up. But there's rumors that Lowry may be potentially traded at some point here to a contender. You've got Pascal Siakam. There's not like that. Like last year, Siakam, Lowry, and Van Vliet were like 3 of the top 6 in minutes at one point per game, which is just insane. But I think Toronto's won 2 of their last 6 games or something. So it's a little bit of a mess there.
They're in need of a shakeup for sure.
Yeah, enjoy that championship. It's just kind of a little bit messy. They got Norman Powell working in, et cetera. It's just, but Ibaka being out, they've moved around a lot of parts here. So
very different team at this point than, then there's a few key guys that won that title, but a lot of the interchangeable parts have been interchanged for a lot lesser parts, I think. And it's not really clicking for them right now. They did enjoy that championship though. I was up there for a wedding while that was going on, and man, they were surrounding the TV even like just after the ceremony, having a blast. So I'm with you. I think, Freddie's definitely in play. I think I like the Lowry side of it a little bit better tonight, though, particularly on FanDuel. He's $500 cheaper, and you're getting a very nice optimal lineup appearance rate out of him, 38%, and most significantly, a 9.8 leverage score in Alex's leverage metric as of the last update that I ran here. So get a very nice number on him. One of the higher boom scores at the position and on the slate overall. So definitely can load up on some Lowry shares at the point guard on FanDuel. We'll get to a significant amount of Van Vliet as well. I think he looks very good. He's just coming down more in the level ownership rate as far as leverage goes. On the other side, Lowry draws a little bit further ahead again in terms of leverage, and also appears in a significant number of more optimal lineups. The boom scores are a little bit closer, so not pulling away quite as much there. But I think I like Lowry better on both sites. He's a little bit closer in salary, only $300 less expensive over on DK. But I like both players for sure. And then I think Siakam, as a small forward on FanDuel, I think he's a little bit more interesting. Getting, again, good leverage on a guy with a good optimal lineup appearance rate. Basically, all 3 of these guys, one of them is going to be in the optimal lineup, if not 2, if not 3. They're all above 33%, and we've got 3 of them. So, it's pretty likely we're going to have at least one of these guys in the optimal here. So it's just a matter of figuring out which one. Siakam being the most expensive, toughest to get to. But like I've said before with Hayward, it's kind of a flat position on FanDuel tonight at the small forward. A little less interesting where you've got more options at the power forward center spot over on DK.
Yeah, and I would agree. I would lean a little bit more towards Lowry tonight. I always do like to caution, in the beginning, the whole Fred Van Elite thing was kind of fun. Because he was, off the bench a lot, and it was kind of a hamstringing me to have to play him. Now that he's good and got a big contract and all this, people are like, oh, is he awesome? No, he's like, for his story, a 4-year guy undrafted, Wichita State undrafted, to get paid. It's definitely. Oh, I see Wheels in there. Wheels, did you win the contest last time we did the Fred Van Elite? Let me know, because I'll get you your free Awesemo subscription if that was you. But it's so I'm playing him kind of like ironically in these contests. I don't think I'll have more than 15 or 20% of him total. Looks like the field's coming in around that same spot. Even on the 4-game slate, I really like the guys in the late night hammer tonight, and that's where I want to go after the guards for this particular one. We didn't quite get, with Gordon Hayward likely starting, we're not getting some of the potential value that we thought we were going to get early on. But that's just, I think he's a perfectly acceptable play. We're projecting him for 5 points times his salary, or 5x times his salary on DK. That's like baseline, right? But now his salary is up there. So that means he needs to get 40 fantasy points just to break even. And that's kind of a tall order for anybody. On these. The interesting thing on the DK side here, since I know you're focusing on the blue site, the DK side here has everybody's in that around 20% range for Siakam, Lowry, Van Vliet, Boucher, OG Anunoby. It's all spread out. So kind of just interesting there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those other guys that you mentioned there, are worth at least touching on. Anunoby and, Powell and Boucher, of course, is the most relevant out of those guys. But I think as mix and match pieces, Anunoby and Powell, we know they're going to get minutes. OG in particular, we've got him slated for 34 minutes. He's a guy who gets a significant amount of run, and he's not really expensive on either side. He's not like a huge upside guy, but as a moving part, for a guy with 15% ownership on a 4-game slate, he's not uninteresting. So I think we can definitely consider him as a mix and match option. Powell a little bit as well. He's significantly inexpensive. That's clunky to say. 4,600 on FanDuel, 4,500 over on DK, where you get him as a small forward also. Another guy who not getting very owned, not very likely to come through for you in any big way, but could be a workable piece in a cashing lineup, and could, if he hits an upside score, be an important piece in a GPP lineup for a bigger tournament field. So something to consider with some of those, also ran types in that tight Toronto rotation.
All right. 20 minutes in and we've only done one game. We're on pace. We're on pace. We have an hour. We have 4 games here. Not to fear. Not to fear, guys. Just deep breaths, deep cleansing breaths. We have a nice little super chat here from Richard. He's asking, can you tell is it somewhat proprietary but in high level terms, can you explain how the optimal lineup is calculated? So when we say the optimal lineup, it kind of, the terms here kind of, like fade for some people means you don't play the person at all. For other people, it means you come in underweight if you're an MME player, et cetera. So the terms are kind of fast and loose here in DFS, which drives me a little bit nuts. But the optimal lineup is generally going to be the perfect lineup that is projected to score the most amount of points. Mm-hmm. Regardless, and I'd say irregardless, but that's not a word, regardless of
well done, sir.
Yes, regardless of the ownership. Now what you come in is, this is where we get the boom bust tool, right? What's the likelihood of someone that exceeding their projections, and by how much? What is their likelihood of failing their projections, and by how much? So that's where you get the volatility or variance in all of this. NBA is a little bit of a different animal because minutes generally equal fantasy points. So it's hard to have bad chalk a lot of the time, especially in these COVID times, because there's just going to be other players. Tonight, we might find some people who are bad chalk. We'll look at some of the popularity here on some of these guys, but that's what the optimal lineup means. So like right now, if I run everything unencumbered in Fantasy Cruncher, 281 is coming up with the best score that's possible for our current projections. Now, what you want to do is now that that's kind of the baseline, does it make sense to play lineups that project for 250 points? Well, maybe if you're doing a game stack or you're doing something to, you think some of these popular guys are going to crumble and you want to go in on them, then yeah, that makes sense. But in our best lineups, I mean, the weakest players are probably Kendrick Nunn, Gabe Vincent, and Dwight Howard. Those guys are all going to be popular because they're inexpensive at the moment. So that's just kind of how you think about that. All right, I don't believe we have the starters yet for the Miami game, but let's.
I haven't seen them. I did see a note popped up from the news god that John Morant's going to go through warm-ups before they decide. So we've got nothing on that yet, but it seems like he's trending toward playing.
All right, well, that's good. You can stay up to date on all DFS news coming out of the Awesemo NBA Twitter. It's literally Awesemo NBA. You can also follow the man, the myth, and legend himself directly. That's newsgod_DFS. That's news with a Z because he's a little bit edgy, right? I'm on to you, Ron. I'm on to you. But definitely check that out because we're working on creating some more breaking news, and then that also is coming into the hockey or into the premium Slack channels as well. The other thing you want to know, I mean, I'm glad I didn't play out the 7 o'clock. I only played tiers, so it's just the skaters. But I'm playing the later hockey slate tonight. But they've got alerts coming up because they're watching line rushes right now on practice. So then they're posting who's on what line, etc. Nobody else is doing that, right? So if you're playing hockey and you have access to that, that's like having, Fantasy Labs isn't doing that. We're doing it, but that's behind the paywall. So that's just one of the things.
That's huge.
that you got.
Yeah, if you're trying to get into DFS into NHL DFS, having those line combinations, especially if anything changes, when you're running it through Fantasy Cruncher in particular, there's so many people out there that aren't making those little changes. A guy moves from the left wing on the second line from the third line up to the second line. That gives them a huge difference in opportunity, and it makes a significant difference in what you can get to on a slate when a cheap guy jumps into that role. So kind of like what we see when a backup point guard takes the minutes in NBA and comes in at the min price, everybody jumps on him. That's what we can kind of give you in NHL that nobody else is doing out there. So that Slack chat is huge for NHL.
Yep, absolutely. So, on the Miami side here, the hard thing with the health and safety protocols, we don't always know who has had COVID or who was a close contact. Right. So for HIPAA laws, which is the, health rules for, a player doesn't have to say that they actually had it or not. The reason and then we don't even know if they have it. Did they have a severe case? Was it just mild symptoms, whatever? So we don't know the health of a lot of the Miami guys coming back. Right. They may not be ready to play full minutes. I would kind of give everybody knock about 10% off of what you think they're going to do, or you can just look at the Awesemo projections, which probably takes some of that into account. But if we look at someone like Bam Adebayo, for example, he's 8,600. We're projecting him for 41 DK points. That's going to get you 4.8 on the value. And I just said 5 is kind of below that. You're on even on the small slates. You're kind of worried about that. You've got Kelly Olynyk, who we know is healthy. I would rather play him over Bam, even though his price has come up. You've got Duncan Robinson, Dragic, et cetera, all these guys back. I don't know really what I want to do with them. So I'm not that interested in anybody on the Miami side. The Detroit side, I'm not particularly fired up about any of them as well. Is there anything that stands out to you in this game? There's one player above 20% in popularity. It's Kendrick Nunn at 20.7. So I don't think I'm alone in this take. But I just knocked 2 teams out of our player pool. That leaves us with 6. And I didn't really like Charlotte, and I was tepid on Toronto. I can't play everybody in the Portland-Atlanta game. I am going to try. But is there anything you want to call out on either side here? Because this is just a whole lot of acceptable plays. They're not bad. They're just not exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're dealing with on both sides of this one. Miami shaky with given the ins and the outs and everything in that lineup that you just went through, and Detroit is not a really good basketball team. Not loaded with very talented players and over the hill Blake Griffin. When Jeremy Grant's probably your best player, you've probably got some problems. DFS wise, I hope that other people out there are thinking that strictly about, I don't want anybody from this game, just cross it off, take it out of my player pool, as like you were kind of just getting at. That creates opportunity for us. So we can look down for a guy like Kendrick Nunn.
What if this was the overtime game tonight? All of a sudden, these plays become very interesting, right?
Right. Exactly. A guy like Kendrick Nunn, you're getting in on him for the minimum. Even if he's coming with 20% ownership, we've got him currently on a 24-minute projection in 30% of the optimal DK lineups. So that's giving him a significant leverage score, positive leverage score, 31.9% boom score rate. So if he starts cracking toward that boom score, and then you do get something like an overtime game where he's seeing run down the stretch, I mean, that starts to grow exponentially, the value that you get out of that 3,000 investment. So if he starts to rack up value like that, that could get away really quickly and become a mandatory building block. So guys like that are the guys to look for if people start to sour on it. And again, he is getting some attention. Another guy that's in that kind of a conversation but costs more is Gabe Vincent. We've got him pegged for 30 minutes tonight. Might be a little different with some of the guys coming back, but if he's getting that kind of a run, he's only getting around 13% ownership. So now we're talking about less people on him, a still decent optimal lineup appearance rate of around 17%. Not a great player by any means, of course, but 0.98 DraftKings points per minute so far this year. He was 0.60 last year in limited opportunity, but if he's getting run, he could produce, and he could produce enough to give us value. On the FanDuel side of things, Bam Adebayo jumps off the page in terms of his optimal lineup appearance rate now that we know he's going. But a ton of people are going to be on him at 8,200 at the power forward spot. So I think I'm going to probably end up with a lot of them as it goes through process and as we come out the other side of this. Yeah. It's a spot that I could, if I was hand building, though, maybe start to look for a different option, just given how heavily owned he is. But that said, I think he's going to be one of the more productive options at the power forward spot.
All right, looks like Gordon Hayward will be starting officially, so that is helpful. Again, 7:30 lock tonight. At 7:30, we're going to go off air, but we're going to pop up minutes later on the Awesemo YouTube channel as we do NFL live before lock, because we have kickoff at 8:15 tonight for the Buffalo Bills, who are hosting the Baltimore Ravens. All sorts of good thoughts on that one that are just waiting to come out, so definitely tune in for that one. Anything else from this game? The next two games, I got a lot to say. This one, I'm okay.
On the other side, just, I mentioned them kind of derisively, but Jeremy Grant, Blake Griffin, both in play, particularly on FanDuel. They look a little bit better over there. Decent, rates as far as the optimal lineup. They're going to be the two more productive guys in this offense most nights when they're healthy. I don't really like getting to Derrick Rose tonight. I don't really need to get to Dylan Wright, Mason Plumlee, any of these other guys. So for me on the Detroit side of things, it would really probably be those two, Jeremy Grant and Blake Griffin on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Plumlee's a little bit interesting. Jock Jackson's a little bit interesting. Just as kind of, affordable mix and match kind of guys, maybe Plumlee where you're rostering multiple centers. You can take Jackson and move him around to a few different forward and guard spots. So they're not without some utility on DK.
All right. Now we have some interesting stuff. So so here's to kind of finish my thought. So yeah, I'm tapping on these guys, but I'm gonna have them in my lineups. Most of the guys from the first two games, I'll be under the field. But if I'm playing, about 50 to 100 lineups, and I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to do because sometimes it's hard doing this on air. But what I will be doing is going under the field on those, because in the next two games was where everybody I like. Yesterday, I said in the free article that we do, we have 4 really good free NBA articles each day. In the morning, or usually around 11 o'clock, I'll post. I'll drop the link here in chat for you guys, DFS building blocks. So what I do is I go through the whole player pool and figure out whose value is going to remain solid the whole time, right? Obviously, news comes out and invalidates some of these things, trades, COVID, whatever. But what I've done here is I've created a bunch of interesting things to try to teach everybody how to look at stuff. So yesterday I said Colin Sexton was what I call bad chalk. I mentioned it's kind of hard to have bad chalk. So what I said was FanDuel was 5,100 and takes care of one of those pesky small forward spots. Go for it. But on DK, I think it was like 6,200. Yahoo, I think he was 24. And I pointed out that in his last 75 games, I think he had just 7 or 8 games of more than 32 fantasy points. Okay, he had 40 last night or 41, depending on the site you're on. Yeah, did I fail on that one? Okay, yeah. But what I was trying to point out is that's a rare outcome. He had a 90th percentile outcome for him. That, whereas if we would have had a third of the field have a tepid showing of 25 fantasy points, maybe even 20, all of a sudden we would have had a leg up on them, right? That's what we talk about when we say leverage. We want to see where the field is going to go, or the boom bust. I felt his ceiling wasn't very high. Guess what? That was just his third game in the last 2 seasons over 40 fantasy points.
Yeah, okay. And it's all about that process.
Yeah, right? So I would have been right the other 75 games, just not last night. So.
Not that one, right?
It happens.
But it's we talk about that a lot in Slack chat and on various shows and everything. It's about not getting into that results-based thinking and just looking at any one outcome. It's about following good process and continually doing the correct thing, making the right decision rather than chasing last night's results, 2 days ago's results, the last time I did this happened type of results. That's not what we want to focus on. So that's definitely, it's a great article. I read it every time it comes out. I edit it sometimes, but yeah, I really like the way that you kind of teach those concepts as you go. So I think that's important.
Yeah, because it's hard to have an article that has a shelf life. So if you're like, oh, this came out hours ago. No. I've written this in a way that it's going to be helpful for everybody. So the one thing I want to talk about today was Philadelphia. So like good value is the entire Philadelphia team at this point. So they're running shorthanded. They've got Joel Embiid not even on the road trip. He's got a knee injury. He could be out for more than the 2 games of this road trip. Seth Curry does have COVID-19. He announced that. So he's in the protocol. Mike Scott back out again with a knee injury. Furkan Korkmaz, bench depth guy who can score, can shoot. We saw that last year. They don't have Alec Burks anymore. Korkman's out with an adductor, and then Vincent Poirier is also in the health and safety protocol. So what this leaves is Ben Simmons, who is not going to, while he's the point guard, he's also not necessarily the ball dominant point guard that you would think of. So he's also going to need some help, right? Tobias Harris just returned out of the health and safety protocols. This will be his second game back. He had an okay outing in the one before. You've got Tyrese Maxey, their rookie, and Shake Milton. Those guys are going to be the secondary ball handlers. So between, those two and Simmons, that's their ball handlers tonight. So they're running very thin. And then with no Joel Embiid, the front court is down to basically Dwight Howard and Tony Bradley. So I suspect Howard is going to start. I would guess he'll slightly get the lean of 24 to 26 minutes. Bradley's going to be coming off the bench. He's minimum price on DK. We already talked about that. He'll probably see 20, maybe 24 minutes, something, Joel Embiid gets into foul trouble. Going against Jonas Valanciunas, that's very possible. This is not an easy matchup for these guys. So Philly's not going to play small, I don't think, as long as Joe Val's out there. And this is a great match. Bradley, not experienced enough to deal with him. And then Dwight Howard, he's on the downslope of his career, and he's not as nimble as he once was for being an incredible defensive player. He's not that guy anymore.
No,
right. So, really. All of a sudden we got this value here. And then you got Isaiah Joe coming off the bench. At least he'll be, he's a guard who will be shooting, we would like to think. And you're going against the Grizzlies here. The only guy I'm not excited about, but I'll play him on Yahoo. I'm not playing Yahoo tonight, but Danny Green, $14 on Yahoo.
I knew it was going to be poor derided Danny Green. Danny's been getting beat up a little bit in the DFS circles lately. I think he's in play. He's 16% optimal lineup in this last update, 14% on DK, 4,900 on FanDuel as a small forward. It's a spot we've talked about a few times, a little bit thin. Maybe we pay down, take a risk on a player that not a lot of people are comfortable getting to right now. 13% ownership on FanDuel, 10% over on DK. I can talk myself into some bad Danny shares that I won't be happy about later. I think you touched on most of the other relevant guys, right? It's going to be the Ben Simmons and Tobias show as much as they can handle. Tobias significant uptick in this kind of a situation, so we should see good amount of usage for him. He's coming up with tremendous rates in our boom bust tool across the board. Not getting owned enough on FanDuel, not getting owned enough on DK. So I would definitely look to start adding some Tobias shares to my lineups. Little bit less so on Simmons. The numbers are right there, but his ownership is more level. That said, I'll definitely have quite a bit of him. He's definitely working his way into a lot of these lineups. Shake Milton, I'm a little bit less high on. We saw the big game from him the other day. Don't know that he's going to be able to repeat that kind of a performance. We've got him pegged for 26 minutes, and there's a few guys working back into the rotation like we talked about. So do we see him go for 31, 2 and 7 again? He was 11 for 15 shooting, 3 of 4 from 3. If you think he's repeating that performance in his 25-ish minutes, then he's a good roster. I personally don't, and the price is up. So not getting to him. Dwight very much in play. Massive opportunity, 4,400 on FanDuel. Lock and load kind of a center. Not actually a lock. I'm not saying play him 100% of the time, but he should be in a lot of your lineups. Not getting enough ownership. Very good optimal lineup rate. And the boom score is hovering around 50% on FanDuel, 40% on DK. So very good opportunity for Dwight.
All right. On the other side, the Grizz, let's go look at them. So we won't know, most likely won't know before 7:30 if Ja Morant is playing or not here. If he does play, what do you think his minutes will be? 20, 25? What's the upside? 28, 32?
I'd be surprised if he cracks 30. I'd be fairly surprised if he gets to like that 28 range. I think we've got him for 20 on the last update from Alex. Okay. I think I had him at 22. I wouldn't expect him to go much more than that.
So if we remember when he first
guy who needed to warm up to even decide whether he's going to go, I just don't trust it.
Yeah, and remember, his rookie year, they weren't even playing him in back-to-backs. They were giving him all sorts of load management, time off, et cetera. This season, from the beginning, so from the first game to the most recent, these are his minutes, and he was starting. 25, 26, 28, 24, 35, 34, and then 13 in the game he turned his ankle. So those are not gigantic numbers. So just caution on that one, which means I'm not going to be playing him.
But if he does come back, he's gonna, and if it is that role, he's gonna be unplayable probably in that role.
Yeah.
And he makes pretty much everybody else outside of maybe Joval, who you mentioned, also kind of unplayable given their pricing, given where what we would need them to do. I think he just takes too much out of the hands of Kyle Anderson, out of the hands of Tyus Jones, even Dylan Brooks, shooting and volume dependent kind of a guy. So maybe he gets there anyway, but I don't really like any of those plays. And it's a weird team, what they do with their minutes. I mean, they get random games like Grayson Allen had 26 minutes and went off scoring the other night. And they just shuffle like 20-minute blocks around in this rotation kind of unpredictably. So I don't love getting to this team anyway, unless there's very, clear lines toward opportunity.
Someone in chat saying, I said, don't play Howard. I did not say that. I think he's a very fine play.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to play him and Bradley on the same lineup. But I think with where I will have my ownership caps, that's probably not going to be an issue for that one. I think they're going to have relatively an even split for their minutes, and Howard's going to be starting. So I just said he's a foul risk against Joval. But
yeah, I think we were both pretty enthusiastic about playing Howard, actually.
Yeah, I have zero issues with him.
I do like the Joval call, though. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think, like you said, Dwight is aged and a little bit disinterested at this point in being the defensive player that he once was, I think. And, Joval should be able to pretty much dominate that matchup. So another guy, he was getting a little bit less owned earlier in the day. It's come up a little bit, but I think we can definitely leverage up on that. One of the better centers on the slate.
Yeah, and that's definitely a worthwhile play. So kind of where I was saying in the beginning there, minutes and opportunity are very helpful. He's got them tonight. Both the centers do, which I find very intriguing on that one. As you mentioned on Memphis, maybe I'd be okay with the Anthony Melton. That's about the only other guy and it's on DK, and you're expecting 17 fantasy points and hoping for 25, which is, woo, that's really exciting. So,
yeah,
all right.
There's another guy who's just kind of a mix in and, in play, as are those other guys that I named before. I'm not saying take them totally off the board, but particularly if Morant is back and is playing that, 20 to 24 minute role, I think it's just too much of a spoiler, but they're in play to mix in.
Absolutely. All right. Now we get to the dessert, the cherry on top. This is the game. This is a true late night hammer. First off, it starts at 10 o'clock, which is 2.5 hours after all the other games, or 2 hours after all of the other games, because we have one at 7:32 at 8, and then we've got this one. So let me get to my notes here because there's a lot that we want to unpack with this one here. So the key things to know is Jusuf Nurkic is out for the next 2 months. He's already had surgery on his fractured, I believe he's already had the surgery for his fractured wrist. So, and it was his right hand, for what that's worth. So what we want to do here is we want to see, okay, what does that do? Because that leaves somewhat of a hole, but we want to keep in mind he was really playing, I think, about 23 or 24 minutes per game. So he was kind of working his way back into shape. This is not like he was when he came back in the bubble last year and was like, oh my God, did Jusuf Nurkic really flirt with a triple-double 3 games in a row? Holy hell, how did that happen? That's not the player he is this year. But what it's going to do is it's going to increase the scoring load and opportunities for Lillard and McCollum. They're going to have to get even more. Their minutes have been staggered this year, more so than they have in the past. So that's good for them, because when we say some minutes are staggered, they're both not on the court at the same time. So when one's taking a break, one of them is almost always on the court. That's a better way of saying it. So that's important. So Lillard is averaging, when Nurkic is playing, Lillard is averaging 1.23 fantasy points per minute. McCollum is averaging 1.8. When Nurkic isn't playing, Lillard is about the same. McCollum jumps to 1.4. Now we're looking at, 10 or 11 game sample size. When they both play with Cantor, Lillard is 1.3 and McCollum's 1.35 FanDuel points. I use FanDuel points so you don't have to worry about the bonuses and all that stuff. So what I'm saying is it's not a huge change for them, but it just should be some more shots, some more scoring opportunities, and we're in a great game environment here. For Nurkic, I suspect he will be starting. Right now, he's averaging, I want to say he's averaging about 18 minutes, 20 minutes or whatever per game.
Cantor, by the way.
Or Cantor, sorry. Yes. Cantor.
That's for the people out there, not correcting you. I know you knew.
Yes, but that's what I was looking at, what I was thinking was not what I was saying. That's important for this one. So I suspect we will see Cantor around 26 or 27 minutes. Little room for upside. We also have Clint Capella that is going to be on the court a lot. That means less small ball 5 from Carmelo or Robert Covington, right? Harry Giles comes into the mix. He's minimum or near minimum price on most of the sites. I think he's going to play about 15 or 16 minutes. I don't think he's going to go over 20, but he's going to play tonight. And that's important. I think he was averaging about 11 minutes prior to this. So he's kind of in the rotation, but not really per se. He's just sort of getting minutes when he can. But now he's going to be in the rotation for there. So I like all of those guys. I'm more ambivalent when it comes to Covington, Carmelo, Derek Jones Jr., Gary Trent. Those guys are all interchangeable. Rodney Hood, they're all 3-and-D guys. Well, with the exception of Trent, who does not do the D part. He does the 3 part, the D part, not so much. But Jordan's not even going to make a face after I insulted one of his favorite players. But in any event, that's what I like from this side. From the other side, I think Capella is very intriguing. I think you can go to, obviously, Trae Young, who's had some down games. Maybe a little unhappiness between John Collins and Trae Young.
Sounds like, yeah.
So there's Harry. This is going to comprise at least half of my player pool will come from this game. What do you want to do? Since clearly I'm pushing the chips in the middle of the table here.
Yeah, it looks like I'm going to be right there with you, as is a wide swath of the field. So I think it's going to be a night where we'll have a bunch of early leaders counting their money, and then a lot of people closing rapidly throughout this game, and a lot of people sweating the exact same players and just hoping they have a different combination of players than everybody else out there. So there's going to be a lot of very concentrated lineups using pieces from this game. So it's going to be about how you put them together differently. Maybe we're talking about leaving a little salary on the table. Maybe we're talking about just mixing and matching some of those other low-owned plays that we talked about before. Not your total punts, but your 10% guys, your 8% guys who have a little bit of upside, have a little bit of reliability. It's a little bit lower of a target overall, just 4-game slate and several very, low game totals. So we don't need massive ceiling scores from some of those role players as long as your stars at your roster come through. So it's an interesting slate from that perspective. But yeah, the significant amount of the scoring is going to be in this late game. This game had a total that was, I think, a solid like 10 points higher than the next highest. Yeah, this game's 234. Next highest is 222.5. So we're talking about 12 solid points there. This is where we're getting most of our offense. You mentioned Lillard and McCollum going to have to ratchet up an already ridiculous amount of volume. So whether they're sharing the court or splitting those minutes, staggering those minutes rather, I'm fine with getting to a very wide swath of them. I think they're both very in play. They're getting owned, but I don't really mind leveraging up a little bit on the field on both those guys on both those sites. I would try not to play them together with a tremendous amount of frequency, but if I get it some, I don't mind it because I think there's room for both of them to get there, especially with the way this team's limited. Other guys, like you mentioned, Derek Jones certainly works his way in there. I get to a lot of Robert Covington on FanDuel, 24.2% optimal lineup. Appearance rate is very good, 35% boom score on his $4,400 salary. He has just repeatedly burned me, and I'm not happy about it. Not happy about how much of them I'm going to have to again tonight.
What position is he on FanDuel? Is he power forward or small forward?
Power forward on FanDuel. Power forward on both sides, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Looks definitely less necessary by far over on DraftKings, where he's not that much more expensive, only $400 more expensive. But given the positional flexibility, the way you can move pieces around, I think he just gets edged out of most of those optimal lineups for better plays. Cantor, I think, is very, very much in play, of course, definitely on both sites. I like it better probably on FanDuel. His 5,200 has his boom score probability ratcheted up to almost 50%. So when we start to see guys like that at that type of a level, and he's only getting owned around 21%, that's a guy I can definitely get more than the public on. So give me a lot of Cantor over on FanDuel. Similar type things with less explosive overall numbers in terms of boom score and optimal lineup. In terms of boom score. As far as optimal lineup rate and as far as leverage goes, he's actually better over on DK, where he's getting almost 30% of the optimal lineup. So Cantor's definitely in consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. John Morant is starting. I see someone asking, is he a lock tonight? No, No, he is most certainly not. I think he is a stay away tonight.
Yeah, it's just too unpredictable, and there's other guys that we can for that price. That breaks us tonight, then I'm willing.
I'm fine with it. Yeah, and we think 25 minutes, 27 minutes is going to be his high outcome.
Yeah.
In our best educated guess.
Yeah, and like I said, what I will do now though is scan my exposures and make sure I'm not getting a massive amount of a Kyle Anderson, somebody like that. So I think that's really, excuse me, I think that's really what that does to us.
All right, I am going to upload some lineups here. From the Atlanta side of things, rank their big three: Capella, Trae Young, and Collins.
I think Trae is in a great spot tonight. His production's been down a little bit, which has driven his salary down. I wish it was keeping people off of him a little bit more. He's getting 28% ownership, right around level as far as his optimal lineup appearance rate. I'm going to be on him more than the field. I think that price is incorrect for Trae Young's upside. So it might not happen today, but he's going to go back to the shooter and the player that we know that he is and that we've seen over the years, or over the last 2 years. 1.35 FanDuel points per minute last year. He's down at 1.19 this year. I think that gap closes and he finishes the year a lot closer to last year's numbers. So give me as much Trae Young as I can get to, pretty much on both sites. Again, another guy who comes down a little bit when we cross over to DK. Price is only $100 more, but there's just a little bit more with the flexibility over there that we can do. 22% ownership, though. I like the ownership a little bit better over on DK. So I'd be happy to get above the field on him as well over there. Capella, definitely think is in play too. Nice leverage number. And he's one of several centers that are just kind of at a plateau in that like 20% optimal lineup appearance rate number on FanDuel. So he'll be in play as I kind of rotate through center options on the singular center site. I think he's definitely very interesting on DK, where you can move him around, play multiple centers, things like that. 4.2 leverage score, so not a lot of people on him at just 15.5% ownership. So definitely can get to some Capella. I like John Collins. He just seems like everybody else is kind of right there. So I'll kind of take what I get of Collins tonight. I'm not going to avoid him by any means. He's fine. He's appropriately priced for the production, for the upside, for the minutes. It's just everybody else is kind of going to be there with you. And I think there are some good options that you can kind of go to other than him. So you can maybe get away from him, but if I'm around the field, I don't mind it.
All right. Just changing some of my player caps here. I'm going 35% Bradley, 35% Howard, 30% Nunn, 35% Cantor, 20% Mason Plumlee, 15% Giles, 60% Lillard and McCollum. I'm going heavy 40% on Lowry. I'm going under the field on Fred VanVleet. I am going under the field on Covington, just because he drives me insane. And I'm going over the field on Joe Val. Those are my key takeaways here. And I've also increased it, so I'm going to get Shake Milton. Ooh, I need to get Maxey. That's the other guy I got to get in there. Anything?
Making some changes as I'm going here as well. Yeah. Mostly that Memphis spot for me. I was getting to a little bit too much of Kyle Anderson for being comfortable with it now. A little bit too much Dylan Brooks. I'm just going to kind of trim them. I don't mind getting to, a handful of shares, not one, but a handful of shares across the full slate of lineups, but definitely don't want to be like 20% Kyle Anderson on a night like this now.
Yeah, Trae Young, very interesting. I want Rocco's newfound blocks at the 5. I don't think he plays the 5 very much. That was a Houston special. I think Carmelo Anthony has a better chance of seeing minutes at the 5, and Giles for this particular opponent, because it's Capella and because it's Collins. They have pretty good size there. Kevin Huerter. Don't know what to do. Do I like him? Do I not? Let's triple the field.
Yeah, he was a guy that was coming up a little bit for me, just as one of those, reasonably priced, not even mid-tier. He's inexpensive, but on this particular slate, he kind of qualifies as mid-tier on FanDuel at 4,900, which is a little silly, but that's the life we're living. So I was getting to a decent amount of Herter, getting to some Cam Reddish in that rotation. He was getting some minutes, so I will probably be with you on shares of those guys. Just putting it into my sorting table here. We do 5 minutes left. Let's see. I can start talking about some actual exposures that I'm going to have here as I sort.
Let's see. My best Fred VanVleet lineup is going to be 280 points.
Guess who my highest owned player is?
Oh boy, is it Freddie?
No, it's Robert Covington.
Oh, I didn't hit crunch. That's oh my god. You don't. You're going to do that to yourself?
Well, apparently.
No, that was correct.
That's
interesting.
It burnt me, like I said, a bunch of times, but it only needs to pay off the once.
Let's see. We got a whole the NFL Live Before Lock is going to be airing in about 7 minutes. We're not going to be on this same stream, but you go over to the Awesemo YouTube channel and you can already see the landing page right now for this. Maybe Jordan wants to drop that in Slack for us or into the YouTube channel to help have everybody be able to see that. I'll make a few more lineups here. I'm going to get that uploaded. God, Covington he's the guy that terrifies me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have him around 50%.
Oh! What's his price on FanDuel?
That's the noise that is going on in my head right now. Under 5K. Not expensive. Also not popping up in front of me. Hold on. Save, come on. 4,400. So very, very much a value play. But don't love it, not comfortable with it.
If we were in Mexico, I would say vaya con Dios, mis amigo. Oh, if we were in Russia, I would say das vidanya.
Now, vaya con Dios, at least you're saying like, hey man, get out there and live, go with God and all that. Das vidanya just means goodbye. You're just saying like, hey, you're dead, man. That's it. See ya. Wow. All right. We'll see. I have faith in Rocco. Let me just click the upload here. I'll give a couple more of my friendly exposures. I think Lillard was my second highest exposed player. So like I said, I'm going to have a gigantic swath of that game.
All right. In honor of Terry taking a stand, I am going to play Robert Covington in my Fred Van Elite lineup. Ooh, so for those of you, I now feel like that's having two plays where I'm hemmed in. So we shall see. We shall see. This is why we play the games.
So a lot of players that we talked about, through the show, definitely at the top of my board in terms of exposures. I mentioned Covington, of course, followed by some much more comfortable names: Damian Lillard, Kyle Lowry, Pascal Siakam, Freddie VanVleet, Ben Simmons. Dwight Howard is a little bit uncomfortable, but terrific value. We talked about him. Tobias is right there, Enes Kanter. So my two big center plays, I've got 77% of my center ownership on FanDuel is tied up in the Kanter and Howard play. And then I'm hoping that the rest of it is just going to Joval. I'd actually, if I was doing it and sitting here manually on a day I wasn't on the show, I probably would have leveraged that up a little bit on Joval, just in terms of, how I go through these things. But I'm comfortable with that. There were just such good value plays between the two of those guys that I'm comfortable being at, pretty high numbers on those two. A lot of John Collins, a lot of Bam. So we spent our money pretty well. When we got to the value, we spent up on a lot of stars.
Yeah, I see someone in here. Let me unhide that. Someone in chat not happy. They're never going to listen to you again because they feel you're foolish for going with Robert Covington. We're just saying what we're doing here, and then in part one and part two is guys, weird stuff happens every single slate, and what we try to teach you here is how to go against the grain in the appropriate spots, which pays off for you. It's harder to do in basketball because it's one of the most projectable sports. There are a ton of places where you can get projections, and most of them are relatively good. Hell, you can even just download the average per player average for the last, and you're going to be, if you are someone who likes to use 20% randomness, great. That works just fine too. It's all about leveraging against what the public is doing and then what the success or failure rate of that could be. So,
and we talked about process, right? And we talked about looking for the right kind of plays and repeating process. And Robert Covington tonight is a defensible play from that regard. I'm going to have a lot of them. It's not comfortable, but those are the kind of plays that win you tournaments. I'm also going to be, there's 25% of the field. So he's not like a total outlier play from any perspective. But you're talking about a guy, he's been way down this year, 0.67 FanDuel points per minute. But last year it was 0.97. He was almost a fantasy FanDuel point per minute guy, getting 32, probably upside from that minutes in the highest scoring game by far of the night at 4,400. There's a ton of value there. So that's the kind of play I am absolutely happy to own a ton of. Take the name off the back of the jersey. Don't worry about the last 5 games of production. Focus on the overall, focus on, the numbers and what they're telling you. That's really how to go about it. So I'm with you out there. I don't feel good about it either. Whoever said that, I'll probably not listen to myself next time either because of it, but I'm going with it.
All right. We are ending the show. Jordan dropped the link into the YouTube channel. We will be on air in about 90 seconds. Well, 120
Just enough time to
seconds, I guess. Just enough time to run to the restroom. But we'll see you guys in just a minute. Good luck, gamers.
Good.